The arena went quiet first. Not the polite kind of quiet. The uncomfortable kind. The kind that spreads when something doesn't belong. 200,000 beings filled the orbital stadium of Ketha Prime. Representatives from 12 advanced civilizations floated, perched, coiled, or stood in tiers that spiraled toward the transparent ceiling. Beyond it, a blue star burned steadily, lighting the arena in sterile brilliance. The galactic performance trials were not entertainment. They were filtration. Every cycle, the strongest, fastest, smartest young competitors in known space came here to measure themselves against the absolute limits of biology. Wars had been prevented because of results from this arena. Species had gained prestige here. Others had never recovered from humiliation. And today, a human teenager stepped onto the platform. He looked 16. Maybe 17. Dark hair, average height, lean build. No visible exoskeleton plating. No secondary arms. No gravity anchor implants. No neural halo augmentations glowing behind his skull. Just a black earth-issued uniform with a small silver patch over his chest. A murmur rolled across the arena. Then it turned into laughter. Not subtle laughter. Not hidden. Open. Recorded. Broadcast. Hovering cameras zoomed in. The announcer, a six-limbed Orlean with polished vocal harmonics, hesitated for half a second too long before speaking. Representing Earth. Another ripple of amusement. Competitor designation, Elias Mercer. Elias stood still at the center platform. He didn't wave. Didn't bow. Didn't scowl. He simply looked around. Observing. The nearest competitor towered over him by nearly 2 meters. Thick bone plating along forearms. Dense gravity-adapted musculature. Designed for crushing environments. Beside that one stood a Nero-born endurance specialist, skin-layered in bioceramic fibers capable of resisting plasma flares. Another floated lightly above the ground, supported by internal antigrave organs. And then there was Elias. The smallest competitor in the entire arena. A commentator's voice echoed through the broadcast channels. Is this symbolic participation from Earth? Perhaps morale-based diplomacy. Or satire. More laughter. A zoomed overlay displayed statistics. Average human gravity adaptation, 1.0 standard. Average reaction time, moderate. Strength class, below tier combat species. Environmental tolerance, limited. A flashing tag appeared beside his profile. Projected finish, 83rd percentile or lower. Elias shifted his weight slightly. Rolled his shoulders. Inhaled slowly. The massive four-armed competitor next to him leaned down, 2 eyes narrowing while the other 2 scanned him. You are aware, the alien rumbled, voice like grinding stone, that this is not recreational. Elias glanced up. Yeah. Another pause. The alien waited for bravado. None came. No threat. No defense. Just calm. The stadium lights intensified. The central AI core activated. A column of white light descended in the middle of the arena floor, projecting the event sequence. Trial 1, Variable Gravity Reactive Sprint. Trial TWO, Kinetic Strength Compression. Trial 3, Neural Adaptation Cascade. Trial 4, Cognitive Combat Simulation. Historical records scrolled across the air in glowing glyphs. Fastest sprint time in 300 cycles, 2 minutes 12 seconds. Highest gravity tolerance recorded, 9.7 standard units. Neural recalibration peak, 0.004 adaptive delay. The numbers were absurd. They were meant to be. Elias looked up at them, blinking once. That was all. A human delegate watched from a distant observation chamber. Ambassador Roland Virek folded his hands together tightly. Earth had debated this decision for months. Send no one, and confirm their weakness. Or send someone young enough not to break under humiliation. Elias had volunteered. No boasting. No speeches. Just sign the form. Back in the arena, the announcer raised its primary arms. All competitors prepare for gravity synchronization. Platforms beneath each participant hummed. Magnetic locks engaged. The floor began to shimmer as microgravitic fields activated in layers. The crowd's laughter softened. Not because they respected the human. Because the trial itself demanded attention. Gravity flickered once. Then stabilized at 1.5 standard. Even that caused subtle shifts among several species. Elias bent his knees slightly. Testing balance. A few alien analysts noticed that movement. He compensates quickly. Minor adjustment. Primitive reflex. The countdown materialized above the arena. 10 massive digits formed in light. 10. The laughter faded entirely now. 9. The gravity surged to 2.0 standard. Several competitors braced. Elias exhaled slowly. 8. The floor's surface texture changed to unstable composite. 7. Cameras tightened on Elias' face. No fear. No excitement. Just focus. 6. A ripple of electromagnetic interference passed through the arena. 5. The four-armed competitor flexed. Muscle fibers swelling. 4. Elias lowered his center of gravity half an inch. 3. The star beyond the dome flared brighter. 2. The gravity fluctuated violently. 1. Total silence. Not mocking silence. Not dismissive silence. The kind that comes before something irreversible happens. The AI voice echoed across the entire system. Begin. And Elias moved. The instant the word begin echoed across the arena, gravity vanished. Not completely. Just enough to destabilize balance. 3 competitors stumbled. 1 overcorrected. The four-armed Korth Prime Titan lunged forward with explosive force, cracking the surface plating beneath him. Elias didn't lunge. He stepped. 1 clean, controlled step. Gravity slammed back down at 3.2 standard units. The shockwave rattled the arena. Several species dropped to 1 knee. Elias absorbed it. Not by strength. By alignment. Spine angled. Knees flexed. Ankles adjusted a fraction of a degree. He pushed forward. The reactive sprint course ignited ahead of them. 200 meters of shifting terrain, unstable traction fields, and randomized gravity pulses. The record holder from 18 cycles ago had described it as like running through an earthquake while someone keeps changing which direction down is. The Korth Prime Titan surged ahead first, raw power eating distance in massive strides. Elias followed. Not sprinting. Not yet. At second 2, the first gravity inversion hit. Up became sideways. Half the competitors veered off trajectory. 1 smashed into a containment barrier. Elias tilted mid-stride, rotating his hips and redirecting momentum without breaking rhythm. The audience noise dimmed slightly. Analysts leaned forward. At second 4, the terrain liquefied into semi-solid polymer. Most species relied on surface penetration force. They drove down to push forward. Elias skimmed. He shortened his stride. Minimized ground contact. He wasn't overpowering the surface. He was negotiating with it. At second 6, the gravity spiked to 5.8 standard. 2 competitors collapsed instantly under the sudden compression. Medical drones deployed. The Korth Titan slowed visibly. Muscles designed for crushing pressure were now overextended. Elias' breathing remained steady. In. Out. In. Out. He had trained in fluctuating gravity chambers back on Earth. Not because humans were strong. Because Earth's own terrain never stayed consistent. Uneven ground. Shifting weather. Mud. Sand. Ice. Concrete. Adapt or fall. At second 8, electromagnetic interference scrambled balance sensors. Several alien species relied on biogyroscopic organs. They faltered. Elias blinked twice. Human equilibrium wasn't sensor-based. It was learned. Hard-earned from childhood falls. At second 9, the arena AI escalated. Gravity spiked to 9.0 standard. The crowd gasped. That level was reserved for final segments. Even the Korth Titan roared under the strain, slowing to a grinding push. Elias accelerated. Not dramatically, but measurably. His stride became sharper. Compact. Efficient. The camera zoomed in. Veins along his neck tightened. But his eyes remained calm. Focused on the finish line now visible through distortion waves. At second 11, a cross-current gravity shear tore across the field diagonally. The Titan lost footing. Slid. Cratered into the surface. Shockwaves rippled. Elias angled 30 degrees into the shear. Used it. Redirected force instead of resisting it. The final 12 meters shimmered. High-friction composite overlaid with fluctuating density. A trap for heavy competitors. Elias barely touched it. 3 short steps. At second 13. He crossed the finish line. The arena didn't react. Not immediately. Because the system hadn't processed it yet. The timer hovered in midair. 13.04 seconds. The AI recalibrated. Silence stretched. 2 seconds. 3. A mechanical tone chimed across the arena. Reactive sprint complete. Pause. New record confirmed. The previous record, 2 minutes, 12 seconds, flickered beside it. Then vanished. Replaced. 13.04 seconds. No cheers. No applause. Just stunned, total silence. The Korth Titan finally staggered across the line at 1 minute 48 seconds, shattered personal best. But irrelevant. All other competitors were still scattered across the course. Some hadn't reached halfway. Medical drones hovered. Analysts frantically replayed footage in holographic overlays. Slow motion. Frame by frame. Zoom on foot placement. Joint alignment. Micro adjustments. One commentator whispered into an open channel, forgetting it was live. He isn't overpowering the environment. Another voice responded. He's solving it. The announcer's harmonic voice returned, slightly less composed than before. Human competitor Elias Mercer, current ranking, first. The word hung there. First. Elias slowed to a walk past the finish boundary. Hands resting briefly on his hips. Breathing elevated, but controlled. He glanced back at the field. Not smug. Not triumphant. Just, assessing. As if wondering why everyone else had struggled. The four-armed Titan stared at him from the ground, 4 eyes wide. You anticipated the inversion, the Titan rumbled. Elias shrugged slightly. They always flip it early. The Titan's pupils constricted. How would you know that? Elias looked toward the massive star beyond the arena dome. Then back at the course. Because if you were designing it. He paused. You'd want to see who adapts first. In the upper observation chamber, Ambassador Roland Virek slowly released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The crowd's biometrics shifted. Amusement spikes disappeared. Curiosity surged. Concern followed. On the massive display above the arena, the system posted an automatic classification note. Subject demonstrates extreme environmental adaptation efficiency. Below it, in smaller text. Further trials required to validate anomaly. The arena floor reset. Gravity normalized. Remaining competitors crossed the finish line one by one, their times now irrelevant footnotes in history. All eyes remained on the human teenager standing quietly at the edge of the platform. The smallest competitor in the galaxy. Now holding the fastest time ever recorded. The announcer's voice echoed once more. Prepare for Trial 2, Kinetic Strength Compression. A murmur rippled through the audience. This one required raw force. No adaptation tricks. No terrain games. Pure output. Several alien analysts visibly relaxed. Yes, one muttered. This will correct the anomaly. Elias rolled his shoulders again. Flexed his fingers once. The compression chamber began to rise from the center of the arena floor, a colossal gravity core press capable of measuring structural output far beyond most biological tolerances. The system projected the previous record holder's force rating in glowing numbers. Unmatched for 112 cycles. The chamber doors opened with a hiss. Elias stepped forward. And the crowd, no longer laughing, held its breath. The compression chamber sealed behind Elias with a metallic hiss. Transparent alloy walls curved upward into a dome reinforced with lead gravitic stabilizers. At the center stood a vertical column, the kinetic strength core. A simple device in theory. Push against it. The system increases resistance. Force output is measured until structural failure, or surrender. The record floated above the arena in massive glowing numerals. 92.4 teranewtons, held by Varkel of Korth Prime, 112 cycles. The four-armed Titan who had just lost the sprint stood straighter at the sight of it. This was his domain. Raw compression strength. Density over agility. He folded 2 of his arms across his chest and watched the human carefully. Inside the chamber, Elias examined the column. He placed one hand on it. Then the other. The arena AI spoke calmly. Compression will begin at 1.0 standard resistance. The floor hummed. Pressure built instantly. Most species required bracing structures. Harnesses. External stabilization rigs. Elias bent his knees slightly. Spine aligned. Hands flat against the surface. Begin. The column pushed back. He pushed forward. The display ticked upward. 5 teranewtons. The crowd leaned in. At 22, several minor species gasped. That alone exceeded average galactic baseline. Elias adjusted his grip. Not straining yet. Breathing steady. The Korth Titan's lower jaw tightened. This was entering enhanced athlete range. The AI increased resistance. The chamber vibrated. Elias' shoulders tensed now. Muscles defined sharply beneath the thin earth uniform. But something was strange. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't roaring. He wasn't exerting the theatrical aggression most competitors displayed. He looked focused. Like someone lifting a heavy crate alone in a quiet room. A new murmur rippled through the stadium. At 60 teranewtons, internal stabilizers activated automatically. The chamber reinforced itself. The previous record holder, Varkel, watched from a VIP tier above. His 4 massive arms rested against the railing. "This is where the smaller ones fail," he muttered. At 70, Elias' breathing changed. Shorter now. More deliberate. Sweat gathered at his temples. But his posture remained perfect. Aligned. Balanced. At 80, the entire arena fell silent again. The number glowed massive above the chamber. 80.1. 80.9. 81.3. The Korth Titan's fingers dug into the railing. At 85 teranewtons, most reinforced species experienced microfractures. At 88, medical teams usually prepared. At 90, the AI voice interrupted. "Warning. Structural limit approaching." Elias' jaw tightened. For the first time, strain visibly etched across his expression. The column trembled. 91.8. 92.0. The record pulsed beside it. 92.4. The previous galaxy best. A number untouched for over a century. Inside the chamber, Elias shifted his footing. A subtle change. One heel slightly back. Hips rotated 3 degrees. He exhaled fully. Then drove forward. The number climbed. 92.5. The arena gasped. 92.8. 93.1. The old record flickered, then dimmed. Replaced. 93.4 teranewtons. The AI froze for half a second. Then announced. New record confirmed. The compression chamber automatically disengaged before catastrophic failure. Pressure released. Elias stepped back. Breathing heavy now. Hands slightly red. But standing. Intact. No fractures. No collapse. The silence was deeper this time. Not shock. Recognition. Up in the analyst tiers, dozens of species replayed both trials simultaneously. Gravity sprint. Compression output. Patterns emerged. A Jalari biomechanist leaned forward, frills twitching. His muscular density is not exceptional. A Virex neural engineer responded. Correct. It's average by galactic standards. Then how? The Jalari zoomed in further. Look at joint sequencing. He engages stabilizer chains before primary groups. Another analyst added quietly. He wastes nothing. It spread rapidly through internal research channels. Humans did not possess superior raw capability. They possessed integration efficiency. Earth gravity fluctuates with terrain variance. Earth weather destabilizes footing constantly. Earth evolutionary history forced coordination under stress. Their nervous systems were not optimized for peak output. They were optimized for adaptation under chaos. The Korth Prime Titan finally spoke, voice low. We trained for maximum force. He looked toward the human below. He trained for instability. In the chamber, Elias rolled his wrists. Flexed his fingers. A medical drone hovered briefly, scanning for internal damage. None significant. Minor strain. Elevated heart rate. Within safe range. The announcer's harmonic tone had lost its earlier amusement. Human competitor Elias Mercer now holds first rank in 2 primary categories. A long pause. Then the system added automatically. Probability of statistical anomaly, 0.002%. The stadium lighting shifted subtly. The atmosphere had changed. This was no longer comedic participation. This was no longer symbolic diplomacy. This was disruption. Elias stepped out of the chamber. As he passed the Korth Titan, the massive alien did not smirk this time. He extended one of his 4 hands. Not in dominance. In respect. You recalibrated under compression. Elias nodded slightly. You fight the weight, he replied. I lean into it. The Titan's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That is not how we were taught. Elias gave a small shrug. Maybe that's the problem. Across the arena, the next trial began to initialize. Neural adaptation cascade. The one event no species had ever completed flawlessly. Rapid sensory overload. Pattern disruption. Decision stress under collapsing variables. This was where specialists shined. Where biologically engineered minds separated themselves from physical competitors. Analysts relaxed slightly. Now we test cognition. Now we test processing speed. Now we see his limits. The chamber doors for the neural cascade opened. Inside, thousands of light nodes flickered unpredictably. Randomized signals. Impossible patterns. Overlapping stimuli designed to break focus. Elias stepped toward it. He paused briefly at the entrance. Not in fear. In assessment. Then he walked inside. And for the first time since the trials began, the galaxy wasn't laughing. It was worried. The neural adaptation chamber sealed shut. Inside, there was no visible opponent. No weights. No terrain. Just light. Thousands of suspended nodes ignited in chaotic bursts across the spherical interior. Sound pulses led over visual disruptions. Gravitic fluctuations destabilized equilibrium by microdegrees. This trial didn't measure strength. It measured collapse. Most competitors lasted between 40 seconds and 2 minutes before cognitive overload forced shutdown. The standing record, 4 minutes, 11 seconds. Elias stood at the center. The AI spoke. Neural cascade begins in 3, 2, 1. The chamber exploded into chaos. Light strobed in non-repeating sequences. Infrasound pulses rattled equilibrium. Directional gravity shifts altered down, in rapid microintervals. Every node projected conflicting data. The brain's job was simple. Adapt. Or fail. At second 1. Elias didn't move. Not physically. His eyes tracked. Not frantically. Precisely. Most species attempted to filter noise. To isolate stable patterns. That was the mistake. There were none. At second 3. The first competitors watching from the sidelines felt sympathetic disorientation just from the broadcast feed. Elias blinked once. Twice. His breathing slowed instead of quickened. At second 5. The AI escalated. Multispectrum pulses engaged. Cognitive decoys overlapped primary signals. The chamber designed to break rhythm. To fragment decision chains. A Virex neural engineer leaned forward. He should be destabilizing. Another analyst replied quietly. He's not trying to stabilize. Inside, Elias shifted his stance half an inch. That was all. He wasn't filtering the chaos. He was letting it pass through him. On Earth, human survival never depended on controlling environment. It depended on reacting to it. Weather shifts. Terrain shifts. Human conflict. Noise. Stress. Constant unpredictability. Humans didn't silence chaos. They functioned inside it. At second 6. The AI introduced delayed feedback illusions. Stimulus appeared to lag by milliseconds. Designed to cause overcorrection. Elias stopped reacting to individual inputs. His gaze softened. Instead of chasing data, he began anticipating disruption. At second 8. The gravity field inside the chamber inverted twice in rapid succession. Any species dependent on internal gyroscopic balance would have collapsed. Elias bent his knees slightly. Lowered center of mass. Neutralized the change before it completed. At second 9. The AI introduced tactical decision overlays. Simulated threat markers. Resource scarcity. Time compression. Competing priorities. The chamber was no longer testing reflex. It was testing judgment. Most competitors panicked here. They tried to solve every input. Elias ignored half of them. Deliberately. He chose what mattered. Discarded what didn't. At second 11. The chamber reached maximum cascade density. The record holder's time marker glowed faintly in the broadcast overlay. 4 minutes 11 seconds. The benchmark. The ceiling. Elias didn't look overwhelmed. He looked calm. Not peaceful. Focused. At second 12. He made a decision. He stepped forward. Not randomly. Not instinctively. He moved toward the densest cluster of interference nodes. The center of the storm. Observers gasped. That increases overload. Cognitive saturation spike. The AI attempted to compensate. Adaptive countermeasures engaged. But Elias had already shifted. He wasn't reacting to chaos anymore. He was collapsing it. By moving toward the highest instability region, he reduced peripheral unpredictability. Created directional consistency. Forced the algorithm into pattern formation. At second 13. The chamber went dark. All nodes shut off simultaneously. Total silence. The AI froze. Processing. Recalculating. Across the arena, analysts scrambled. System error? Power failure? No. The central display illuminated slowly. Neural adaptation cascade, complete. Time, 13.87 seconds. The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was comprehension. The previous record didn't just fall. It was irrelevant. 4 minutes had been the limit. Elias had ended the cascade in under 14 seconds. Not by enduring it. By solving it. The AI voice resumed. Tone altered. Less neutral. Subject demonstrates extreme adaptive cognition. Pause. Cascade terminated due to algorithmic saturation. The phrase echoed through the stadium. Algorithmic saturation. The system had reached its complexity ceiling. Elias hadn't broken. The test had. Inside the chamber, the lights slowly restored. Elias blinked once in the returning brightness. He rolled his neck gently. Exhaled. No trembling. No collapse. Just elevated pulse. The doors opened. He stepped out. The Korth Titan stared at him. Not with rivalry. With calculation. You did not endure it, the Titan said. Elias shook his head. You don't survive chaos by fighting every piece of it. He glanced back at the chamber. You find the pressure point. Up in the council observation tiers, emergency subchannels activated. This is not isolated physical anomaly. This is cross-domain dominance. Adaptive thresholds exceed model predictions. A Jalari strategist whispered. We built these trials to find superiority. A Virex replied. We may have just found inevitability. The arena lights shifted again. Only one trial remained. Cognitive combat simulation. The ultimate measure. Strategic processing under simulated warfare. Historically dominated by engineered tactician species. Where instinct failed and calculated intelligence prevailed. The announcer's voice returned, steadier now, but stripped of earlier humor. Prepare for final trial. Elias looked toward the final chamber rising from beneath the arena floor. Massive. Armored. Surrounded by projection arrays. He stretched his fingers once more. And for the first time, the galaxy understood something unsettling. The smallest competitor in the arena was not adapting to their system. The system was adapting to him. And it was running out of room. The cognitive combat chamber rose from the arena floor like a war monument. LAD projection arrays circled its perimeter. Strategic overlays shimmered faintly across its armored surface. Inside, a fully adaptive military AI waited, one used to train fleet commanders. This was not reflex. Not strength. This was dominance under pressure. The previous record survival time glowed above the arena. 4 minutes, 3 seconds. Held by strategist King Talvek of the Virex Dominion. No one had ever defeated the simulation. They survived it. Until collapse. Elias stepped into the chamber. The doors sealed. The interior ignited into a holographic battlefield. Asteroid belts. Distant suns. Resource nodes. A small defensive fleet under his command. Opposition, numerically superior hostile armada. The AI spoke. Command authority granted. Simulation begins. The battle erupted instantly. Missile arcs streaked across space. Enemy formations split into flanking vectors. Signal interference flooded the tactical display. Most competitors reacted immediately. They scrambled defenses. Redirected shields. Counter-fired aggressively. Elias did none of that. At second 2, he pulled his fleet back. Not retreating. Repositioning. Observers frowned. Passive strategy. At second 4, he deliberately exposed a smaller unit. The enemy AI pursued aggressively. Hook taken. At second 6, he rotated his formation 30 degrees off predicted defensive alignment. The enemy fleet overshot trajectory. Collided with its own secondary line. Minor disruption. At second 8, Elias shut down one of his own ship's engines. The commentators gasped. Self-sabotage. No. The disabled vessel drifted directly into the path of the enemy's central firing arc. Blocking it. Forcing redirection. At second 10, he triggered a microdetonation from the sacrificed unit. Not as an attack. As debris. The explosion scattered asteroid fragments across a narrow corridor. At second 12, He funneled the enemy fleet through that corridor, exactly where gravitational turbulence was highest. And at second 13, he activated the environment. Not weapons. The environment. The eye's own physics engine calculated collision probabilities too late. The enemy fleet compressed into its own advance wave. Chain reactions triggered. Shields overloaded. Navigation collapsed. Total systemic failure. Simulation ended. Victory. Time displayed across the arena. 13.22 seconds. Silence. Absolute. Unbroken. The AI did not immediately announce results. It recalculated. Ran alternate branches. Simulated counter-adaptations. Every branch returned the same conclusion. Opponent defeat probability, 100%. The chamber doors opened slowly. Elias stepped out. No triumphant expression. No raised fists. He looked almost puzzled by the scale of the reaction. The announcer's voice carried through the arena. Stripped of tone modulation. Pure. Cognitive combat simulation, concluded. Pause. First recorded total victory. A murmur began. Not fear. Not anger. Understanding. Across analyst tiers, species who had engineered themselves for strength, speed, intellect, reviewed the data. Humans were not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most intelligent by raw metrics. But in every trial, they adapted faster. Integrated variables quicker. Used instability as leverage. A Jalari strategist spoke quietly into a council channel. We optimized for specialization. A Virex commander replied. They evolved for unpredictability. In the upper chamber, emergency council lights activated. A policy draft began forming before the arena had even cleared. Designation review, Homo sapiens. Current classification, mid-tier developing species. Status, under revision. Elias stood at the center platform once more. The smallest competitor in the galaxy. Now holding every primary record. The Korth Titan approached him slowly. 4 massive arms folded respectfully. You are not the strongest, the Titan said. Elias nodded. Yeah. You are not the fastest. Another nod. Probably not. The Titan's voice lowered. But you solved every trial. Elias glanced around the arena, at the stunned faces, the frozen analysts, the flickering holograms of shattered records. You built the tests to find who survives chaos, he said simply. A small shrug. We grow up in it. Above them, the final announcement appeared across every broadcast channel in known space. Human baseline parameters reclassified. Tier 1 adaptive species. New advisory protocols attached. Do not assess humans by raw metrics alone. Do not assume environmental instability disadvantages them. Do not equate size with limitation. Do not rely on rigid systems when facing them. Ambassador Roland Verrek closed his eyes briefly in relief. They hadn't sent a champion. They had sent a baseline. And that realization rippled across the galaxy far louder than applause ever could. Elias looked up at the star burning beyond the transparent dome. He didn't look proud. He looked thoughtful. As if replaying the trials in his head. As if analyzing what he could improve next time. The announcer finally asked the question every species was thinking. Human competitor Elias Mercer, how did you prepare for these trials? Elias scratched the back of his neck. Honestly? A faint smile. I just ran. Lifted. Played strategy games. Grew up. The broadcast cut to the council chamber. Dozens of species stared at one another. If this was ordinary, what would extraordinary look like? The final system message locked into the galactic archive. Conclusion, humanity does not dominate through perfection. They dominate through adaptation. And in a universe that never stops changing. That was the most dangerous trait of all.